Our lesson for this evening service will be from 2 Kings chapter 11, verse 19. It's a very direct read. It's a very, very direct read. Just a single verse, but I'll be very quick. This will be a very quick one. Hallelujah. In 2 Kings chapter 11, from verse 19, 2 Kings chapter 11 generally, we are introduced to a character named Queen Athaliah, who seizes power, who is the mother of King Ahaziah of King Judah, who was part of the kings that died, and she seized the throne for herself. One thing that we first want to pick out from this lesson is that God is very intentional about leadership. God is very intentional about politics. And I fear that we've raised a generation of Christians that want to be very apathetic. They want to be very removed from anything involving politics. And it's like one of the reasons why we are seeing the chaos that we are seeing in our society today, in our countries today, is because the Christians that ought to be the light in the chaos, that ought to bring order to the disorder, have not even come to the consciousness of what they ought to do. And we've seen this as something that God had always been intentional about doing, bringing order to government, bringing godliness and righteousness to the government of men. And we see this in Samuel, we see this in Judges, we see this in 1 Kings, 2 Kings, we see this in Exodus, we see this in the New Testament, and we see it even till today. But one of these examples is what we look at in 2 Kings chapter 11, and where we see the character of Queen Athaliah, a wicked woman who seizes power for herself, power that she was not initially ordained to have. And what does this tell us? It tells us that, look, if God is intentional about the government of a nation, if God is intentional about the leadership of a church, anybody who installs himself or herself without the endorsement of God is only setting himself or herself up for disgrace. And this is what we saw here with Queen Athaliah. She installed herself and made an attempt. If you look at the earlier chapters of chapter 11, it says, but Ahaziah's sister said, as she began to destroy the rest of the royal family, she wanted to make the kingdom of Israel a monarchy. This is a nation in which God himself had chosen for his glory. This is a nation, a generation where out of its root, from its offspring, Christ himself will have to come as the Redeemer of the world. And here is a woman who wants to just take over everything. There's no way. There's Yorubas will say one thing. Onishekin we share kumama bajelo. Like you that owns work cannot be looking at it to get to be spoiling. And what did God do? God raised up men. He raised up men first and foremost to save one of the children called Joash and preserved him. And the verse says, but Ahaziah's sister Jehosheba took Ahaziah's infant son Joash and stole him away from the rest of the king's children who were about to be killed. Imagine a grandmother killing her grandchildren and hid him from Athaliah so his child was not murdered. Joash remained hidden in the temple of the Lord for 6 years while Athaliah ruled over the land. See the kind of cruelty. A grandmother killing her own children. That's why they will say nothing new happens under the sun. What is happening in this world that has not happened before? Here we see 2 Kings chapter 11. We see a grandmother killing the children of her own son, just so that she could remain the queen of Israel. Life is evil, very evil, and conspiracy has no reward. Throughout the time she was reigning, she felt her power would never end. But what happened in verse 13? It said Athaliah heard the noise by the palace guards, and that was not the verse. That's not the verse mainly was from verse 19. So I want to stick to that verse. But I just want to give us a little context here. Verse 19 says, Then the commandments of the Karaite mercenaries and the palace guards and all the people of the land escorted the king from the temple of the Lord. They went to the gates of the royal guards and into the palace, and the king took his seat on the royal throne. Verse 21, the last verse now says, Joash was 7 years old when he became king. No matter whatever is meant for you will become to you. All you have to do is act in discretion. And this is something that I just want to say to somebody. If you are in a situation or in a space where you are in a power tussle, let's say you ought to be in a position of leadership, and by chance some people have used ogboju or used power or used to chance you, you have to be wise. If it demands you run, run. If these people that have taken your position have the resources to end your life, if you are in a vulnerable situation, hide. There's no shame in that. It's wisdom for you. Eventually, when it's time, God will call you into your position. Joash was 7 years old. This is not Josiah, Joash. This is a different character. And his grandmother was killed eventually. What am I trying to say in essence? I'm trying to say that, look, if God has ordained you to be a leader and you have conspiracy brewing around you, know when to run. There is this song Kenny Rogers is saying, know when to hold them, know when to walk away, know when to hide, know when to stand, know when to leave. You must be discreet, you must be conscious, you must be wise when you are dealing with enemies, especially if you're a young person. They will say, Yoruba will say something, "Akoko gagara, tí o fẹ́ komode kuko." That a prime example was this queen. The position was not for her, but she had to now start killing her own children. But in the end, what happened? Jehoiada, one of another character, the priest, ordered that she should kill. Her time was up. And this is what for somebody. Could it be that you're in a position of leadership and you know that God has not put you there? It could be in church, it could be in your place of work, it could be in politics. A lot of them are in Nigeria today. The masses did not vote for them. They put themselves in power. Eventually, it's disgrace and shame that ends it. So if this is you, step down and allow who ought to be in power, regardless of how young they seem to you, regardless of how inexperienced they seem to you, and regardless of however anybody power is ought to go to, should go to the person. Never stand in the way of someone's entitlement. Never stand in the way of someone's birthright. Because in the end of it, and never be the machine of conspiracy. Because at the end of it, what ends it? Death, shame. Queen Athaliah, all throughout her reign, thought she would reign forever, thought she would have power forever. But in the end, what happened? She was put to death in a very shameful way. We don't want this for ourselves. So if you are in a position of leadership that you ought not to be in, you know you ought not to be in this position, do the honorable thing and step down. That is the word for this evening. 2 Kings chapter 11, verse 19. The verse that was given to us was only verse 19, but just for a brief context, that's why I went back and forth. Normally I wouldn't do that, but I just pray that as little as I've said, you've been blessed by it. Thank you.